So this is the second video on international trade, and it's considering some of the analytical and innovative points which could be made in a 25-mark answer. Now, it's commonly assessed it wasn't a legacy, and as you can see also in the new spec. But actually some of the topics in international trade are very similar, and some of the points can be used across the topics, but perhaps just might need a little tweaking depending on the question. So for example, if it was on globalization or on trade liberalization or trade blocks, many of the same points apply. And therefore this video is going to be used as a planning tool to assist you with, planning potential questions. Now the first video was on benefits. This video is on the issues of international trade. And to begin with, we're going to address global imbalances, whereas countries might become too dominant and almost show monopoly power. Now, some countries have been accused of not competing fairly in global trade, and China is one of those countries. So China has been accused of dumping commodities such as steel by countries from every continent. So as we can see from the diagram, the reason this is an issue is because China's price is uncompetitive for local producers. And we see how little they will be able and willing to produce at that price. Some companies at full capacity still won't be generating normal profits and therefore be forced to shut down. If firms are forced to shut down, this could be a large volume of workers in a particular industry, so we would see structural unemployment increasing. This will of course mean those workers are no longer in demand, leaving them in a position of having a mismatch of skills to jobs available. So what we may see is hysteresis, as the longer they're out of work, their skills deteriorate or they're forced into jobs which they are over-skilled for, causing a loss of productivity. So depending on the volume and if the industry had been prevalent in that country, long-run aggregate supply could fall.
Daniel Gast only started work at steelmaker Salzgitter in northern Germany 1 year ago. He's in charge of quality control. But he's already wondering if his job is safe. In recent years, the steelworks has barely been turning a profit, even though it's operating at full capacity. Competition from China is pushing down prices.
Right now, China is flooding the market with cheap steel. We wouldn't be able to produce a single slab at those prices.
These coils of steel will be turned into cars or washing machines. But the same bought from Chinese companies cost 40% less than they do at Salzgitter. Staff wonder if Salzgitter can ride out the flood of cheap steel from Asia.
Für mich persönlich ist es halt momentan schon besorgniserregend.
It is alarming for me personally. I'm relatively young and highly skilled, so I'm not in the most immediate danger. But for others at the company, especially older colleagues who've been here for a long time, the situation is much more precarious.
The next issue of international trade is the movement of people and how it can cause wage deflation. Now obviously in the UK it was used as an argument in the referendum for Brexit. However, it must also be noted that fact-checking has found that migration tends to have a small effect on wages, and it's mostly on the lower skill paid level jobs. And of course it can bring in new skills and greater labour, which can obviously have a positive effect on long-run aggregate supply. But this video is focused on the drawbacks. So as the diagram shows, a positive net migration can increase the supply of labour, which reduces the bargaining power of workers. And therefore what we see is that wage deflation taking place, and we might not see the wage growth that we're expecting throughout time, even if, for example, we're experiencing economic growth. Now, the next drawback is going to be based on the intertwined nature of countries due to global trade.
Chris, good morning to you. As the Wall Street Journal is saying this morning, the American financial system has been, and I'm quoting here, shaken to its core.
Financial institutions are in trouble. 158-year-old Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy.
Financial markets around the world went into freefall today as confidence in the banking system fell sharply.
So the best example of this was the financial crisis, and as we can see by some of the most developed countries in the world all got into recession in 08-09. And in fact, over 59 countries experienced a recession during that time, highlighting the systematic risk that was involved. Now, with companies being multinational, lending and trading across the globe, they'll be exposed to the risks and the rewards. So an event in one country, such as the housing market crash in the US, could then trigger a collapse across the entire world. And that would obviously then cause those countries to see high levels of cyclical unemployment and a fall in living standards due to the sheer size of that shock. Now, we also need to consider the environmental impacts of world trade and the negative externalities involved with greater development of countries. So more production, there's going to be a great requirement for the extraction of fossil fuels, and what that will mean is obviously for resource depletion, pollution, and ultimately climate change to continue to get worse.
In the last 35 years, China has been through a massive industrialization and urbanization, and it's growing. China is the factory of the world, manufacturing for all the Western countries. And much of the pollution of that industry is getting dumped in our backyards. And in this area surrounding Beijing, plus the Shandong Peninsula, coal consumption is equal to the total coal consumption of the United States in a not very big area.
Air apocalypse. Schools have been shut down. The toxicity has reached that worst level.
你说我们在外头待，在外头跑，呼吸这样的空气，我觉得早晚就得癌症。
So the last diagram which could be used is based on inequality. Now, if countries developing so fast, they will see a certain demographic truly benefit from this instantly. And obviously the higher income groups will see their income and wealth grow at a much faster rate than, for example, lower income groups. And it will take time for other income groups to catch up. And we have seen high levels of inequality in, again, countries like China. But actually recently we have seen a rise in the middle income and the middle class, and inequality starting to slow or even fall. But actually developed countries like America, we've seen the biggest rise. And this could be because of, again, the lower income groups being worse off, possibly because of international trade and the work opportunities obviously diminishing. But anyway, we can see this by the Gini coefficient with the Lorenz curve. Now, the closest it is to zero, the more equality that the country has. So if we were to show a widening inequality gap, we'd want it to be further away than the 45-degree line.